At 2,000 feet above Puerto Cabello, the Caribbean shimmered in silence beneath the first light of dawn. Onshore, a U.S. Marine forward base built overnight from steel containers and radar tents pulsed with routine drills. Offshore, three gray silhouettes, the USS New Orleans, USS Somerset, and USS San Antonio, guarded the coastline like iron sentinels. To Washington, this was just another deterrence mission. To Caracas, it was provocation. At 0542, a faint radar blip appeared, then vanished. Moments later, Catatumbo-X suicide drone, developed in secret by Venezuelan engineers, tore across the low clouds. Its camera locked onto the marine landing zone. Seconds later, impact. The explosion lit the coastline in white fire. Surveillance satellites captured 3 U.S. warships abruptly changing course, engines roaring as alarms echoed through the fleet. For years, America had mocked Venezuela's defense industry, but that morning, a locally made UAV had forced an entire U.S. expeditionary fleet to reposition. The message was clear: no empire remains untouchable forever. Stay tuned to the counterstrikes, and political shockwaves are next. Dawn was still breaking when Caracas's southern command center, buried beneath a nondescript industrial complex outside Maracay, came alive. Banks of monitors flickered with satellite imagery, flight telemetry, and encrypted coordinates. Inside, Colonel Rafael Murillo, commander of Venezuela's newly formed unmanned strike division, stood before the live feed of the attack. The Catatumbo-X had completed its flight path, 280 kilometers of undetected penetration through contested airspace. To the untrained eye, it was just a small drone. To the colonel, it was proof that Venezuelan engineering had finally breached the technological wall long dominated by foreign powers. The Catatumbo-X wasn't a toy cobbled together from civilian parts. It was a hybrid of Iranian and indigenous Venezuelan technology redesigned for stealth and endurance. Powered by a low-heat signature turbojet coated with radar-absorbing polymer and guided by terrain-following AI navigation, it could cruise at 160 kilometers per hour for more than 3 hours. It carried a 15-kilogram high-explosive charge, custom-shaped for maximum pressure on hardened targets. Every component, from its carbon fiber wings to its autonomous detonation circuit, had been manufactured within Venezuela's borders, an audacious statement of independence. The operation, codenamed Ciclón Bolivariano, had been in planning for 7 months. Intelligence units within the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, FANB, had tracked the movement of U.S. Marine detachments along the Caribbean since early spring. Using disguised fishing trawlers and private satellite imagery bought from commercial providers, they mapped every landing site, radar blind spot, and logistics hub. When the Marines set up their temporary airstrip near Puerto Cabello, Venezuelan command saw opportunity, a symbolic strike that could shift the psychological balance across Latin America. At 0517, the Catatumbo-X launched from a concealed truck-mounted rail deep in the coastal jungle. The operators used fiber optic relays buried along the shoreline to maintain control until it switched to full autonomy. Its onboard camera transmitted real-time infrared footage of the coastline overlaid with digital waypoints. It flew low, just 15 meters above the waves, blending into the sea clutter, invisible to radar. By the time U.S. sensors picked up a thermal anomaly, it was already diving. The blast radius of the impact shredded the makeshift marine landing pad. 2 MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft were destroyed beyond repair, along with portable fuel depots and communication towers. Casualty reports remain classified, but intercepted U.S. field communications confirmed multiple injuries. The nearby fleet scrambled within minutes, fearing additional waves of drone attacks. From the Venezuelan perspective, the strike was not merely retaliation, it was reclamation. For decades, Washington had used economic sanctions and military posturing to isolate Caracas. Yet here was the new narrative, a self-sufficient military power capable of projecting asymmetric deterrence. National television in Venezuela aired blurred satellite images of the explosion, declaring it a defensive response against unauthorized foreign presence. Crowds in Caracas erupted in cheers, waving flags as military parades rolled through Bolivar Avenue. But behind the celebrations, the leadership was calm and strategic. President Maria Teresa Rodriguez, successor of the Bolivarian legacy, convened her National Security Council. She ordered every military installation into condition rojo not to escalate but to prepare for the inevitable political storm. Diplomatic backchannels buzzed between Caracas, Havana, and Tehran, while Moscow released a cautious statement blaming unprovoked U.S. exercises near sovereign waters. Within the Pentagon, the reaction was immediate and divided. Some saw the strike as a humiliation, a third-tier military embarrassing the world's most advanced expeditionary force. Others recognized it as a warning that the future battlefield was shifting from trillion-dollar carriers to thousand-dollar drones. General Adrian Whitaker, head of Southcom, ordered a full-scale review of all forward deployments along Latin America's coast. Within 24 hours, at least 5 U.S. naval vessels repositioned further north to minimize risk exposure. In the intelligence corridors of Langley, analysts pored over telemetry trying to decode the Catatumbo-X's guidance signature. They found traces of Iranian firmware patterns similar to the Shahed 136 architecture but adapted with unique Venezuelan encryption layers. This hybrid signature raised red flags across the global defense community, proof that drone technology had fully proliferated beyond the traditional drone powers. Meanwhile, inside Venezuela's own defense labs, engineers celebrated quietly. Many of them had been trained abroad under false names, returning home with skills in avionics materials science and AI control systems. Their project had been dismissed as fantasy by foreign experts. Yet the Catatumbo-X had done what no Venezuelan aircraft had achieved since the Cold War. It had forced the United States to react. As dawn turned to noon, the Caribbean sky was a tangle of contrails and circling jets. FA-18 Hornets patrolled overhead while U.S. destroyers deployed electronic warfare suites to jam any incoming signal. But there was no second wave. The silence was heavier than the explosion itself. Every radar operator, every Marine officer waited, listening to the static, aware that the rules had changed overnight. By late afternoon, the first footage leaked onto social media, grainy but unmistakable. A Venezuelan soldier filmed the launch from behind a camouflage tarp, shouting "Por la Patria" as the drone accelerated. Within hours, hashtags like #Catatumbo-Strike and #DroneWarCaribbean trended globally. Military analysts debated whether the footage was authentic. But for millions, watching authenticity didn't matter. The symbolism did. From the jungles of South America to the screens of Washington, a single drone had rewritten the psychological map of modern warfare. Small nations could now challenge great powers, not with fleets, but with innovation. And in that shift, the Catatumbo-X became more than a weapon. It became a statement, a spark that hinted at the coming storm between old empires and new defiance. By the evening of the second day, the skies above the southern Caribbean were no longer calm. A fleet that had once projected invulnerability now moved in deliberate, cautious formations. On the deck of the USS New Orleans, sailors ran emergency drills, reconfiguring missile batteries for close-range interception. The sound of hydraulic lifts, radar sweeps, and coded alarms filled the steel corridors. The strike had shaken them not because of the damage it caused, but because of what it represented. At Pentagon South Command, General Adrian Whitaker received continuous live feeds from reconnaissance drones circling the Venezuelan coastline. Analysts pointed to faint heat signatures along the mangroves north of Puerto Cabello, possible mobile launchers. A decision loomed: retaliate overtly or reassert dominance through surveillance and deterrence. The U.S. could not appear weak, yet any direct strike risked escalation into a regional crisis. Whitaker's directive was precise: Operation Veiled Sentinel. A fleet of RQ-4 Global Hawk drones and P-8 Poseidon aircraft would conduct persistent overwatch, mapping every radar emission within 300 nautical miles of Venezuelan shores. Meanwhile, electronic warfare vessels deployed ANSLQ-32V systems to intercept encrypted signals from suspected Catatumbo command posts. But there was a deeper agenda. The U.S. needed to control the narrative. Within hours, major Western outlets released synchronized reports framing the attack as a minor incident caused by militant irregulars. No mention of a Venezuelan state program. The aim was clear: deny legitimacy to the drone strike, prevent it from inspiring copycats. Yet on Latin American social media, the opposite occurred. independent journalists and digital activists spread satellite imagery showing the repositioning of U.S. ships, proving that Washington had indeed been caught off guard. Memes of the Catatumbo-X, painted with lightning bolts, and national slogans flooded timelines. The psychological war had begun. Inside Caracas, Colonel Murillo reviewed this information war with quiet satisfaction. His strike had achieved more than physical disruption. It had pierced the myth of technological superiority. Across South America, defense ministers called emergency meetings not to condemn Venezuela, but to study it. Bolivia, Nicaragua, and even Argentina requested access to Catatumbo flight data. For the first time in decades, the region saw a weapon not as a threat, but as a symbol of sovereignty. Meanwhile, in the corridors of U.S. intelligence, the tone turned grim. Langley's drone warfare experts analyzed fragments of electronic residue from the attack, compressed frequency bursts that did not match any known Venezuelan system. Someone else had helped. Speculation pointed toward Iranian technical advisors stationed in Zulia, or even Chinese AI. White consultants contracted through civilian tech fronts. If true, it meant the Western Hemisphere was no longer an exclusive theater of U.S. control. That evening, aboard the USS Somerset Marine engineers disassembled what was left of the destroyed airstrip's radar array. The remains of the drone carbon shards' warped circuit boards were flown to the ship's laboratory. There, they confirmed a chilling detail: the Catatumbo-X's AI core contained adaptive targeting algorithms that learned mid-flight, updating its path based on live electromagnetic feedback. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an autonomous hunter. The next morning, President Rodriguez addressed her nation. Her tone was measured, firm, and deliberate. We do not seek war. But no foreign soldier will ever walk Venezuelan soil without consequence. The speech aired across Latin America, echoing through Spanish-language news channels and mobile phones in U.S. bases alike. In Washington, State Department officials debated sanctions, but even they knew punitive measures would look weak compared to the raw symbolism of what had already occurred. In military terms, the United States could destroy Venezuela's entire drone infrastructure within a day. But politically, it couldn't erase what millions had already witnessed: the fallibility of American dominance. Every press conference, every Pentagon statement only reinforced the perception that the mighty superpower had been challenged and forced to retreat. The counter-operation went ahead nonetheless. Late that night, two F-35B Lightning II jets lifted from the USS San Antonio, executing a reconnaissance strike over suspected launch zones. High-resolution thermal scans confirmed several decoy vehicles, but no active launchers. Venezuela had already moved them deeper inland. The mission returned without engagement, leaving Washington with nothing but empty jungle and more questions. Then came the leak. An anonymous source within Southcom shared classified images showing 3 U.S. warships repositioning eastward immediately after the strike, precisely what the media had been instructed to deny. The photographs went viral within hours, accompanied by the phrase, "If it's a minor incident, why are the ships running public pressure mounted?" And for the first time in decades, the Pentagon's credibility faltered in Latin American discourse. At midnight, a final intelligence briefing summarized the situation. The Catatumbo-X program exists and is state-backed. The drones use modified AI architectures not yet countered by standard U.S. defense protocols. Venezuela's asymmetric warfare model could be replicated by non-state actors within months. General Whitaker stared at the data silently. The realization was unsettling, not just militarily, but philosophically. The U.S. military had always prepared for wars of scale of fleets and divisions. But this was war by adaptation. War by imagination. Outside the Caribbean horizon was a dark mirror. The fleets drifted, engines idling, waiting for the next signal. Somewhere inland, Venezuelan technicians disassembled their launch rig, carrying its fragments through the dense jungle toward another undisclosed location. They knew retaliation would come. They also knew something had changed forever. By the fourth dawn, the waters off Venezuela had turned eerily quiet. The thunder of U.S. engines, once constant, had faded into a distant hum beyond the horizon. Fishing villages along the coast whispered of giant ships moving under the night, their lights dimmed, their radar arrays pointed north. To them it felt like the storm had passed. But in truth, the storm had only changed shape. Inside the Miraflores presidential palace in Caracas, President Rodriguez sat surrounded by maps, satellite feeds, and silent advisors. The strike's success had electrified the nation, but she knew better than anyone Washington never forgot. The Catatumbo-X had forced a retreat, but it had also drawn the gaze of every intelligence agency in the hemisphere. Across the ocean, algorithms scoured Venezuelan telecom grids, hunting the digital fingerprints of the drone engineers. Every keystroke, every encrypted message was now under watch. At the CIA's Counter-Asymmetric Task Force in Langley, Director Ethan Graves briefed the President's Security Council. This was not an isolated provocation. It's a doctrine shift. They've proven they can produce smart munitions without external logistics. If replicated, this could erode deterrence across our southern flank. The words hung heavy in the sterile room. For decades, Latin America had been a theater of diplomacy and deterrence, not innovation. Now it was a laboratory of defiance. Meanwhile, in the humid jungles of Zulia State, Colonel Murillo's team disassembled what remained of their mobile launch platform. Soldiers wrapped the Catatumbo's ground control modules in tarps, carried them by mule through narrow trails, and buried them beneath false terrain. Murillo's eyes were hollow, but steady. He knew retribution was coming. Above, a constant electric buzz filled the air as U.S. drones scanned the forests, searching for radio anomalies. Every heat signature risked drawing missile fire. Still, the team persisted, moving only under moonlight. Across the Caribbean, Operation Veiled Sentinel had entered its covert phase. Instead of open retaliation, the Pentagon opted for a war of invisibility. Cyber units from Fort Meade launched intrusion attempts into Venezuela's defense intranet, targeting AI coordination servers suspected of managing Catatumbo flight simulations. At least 3 systems went dark overnight, their operators aware that foreign hands were probing inside. But Venezuela had prepared for this. Their networks, segmented and shielded by analog redundancies, absorbed the hits and continued running. The propaganda war intensified. In the United States, official press releases minimized the incident as a rogue drone test gone wrong. In Venezuela, state TV replayed footage of the explosion in slow motion, overlaid with patriotic orchestral scores and slogans of defiance, Tecnología de la Libertad. Across the global south, it resonated. In online forums and military think tanks from Tehran to Jakarta, strategists dissected the strike like a case study in 21st century guerrilla warfare. But beneath the noise, quiet diplomacy began to stir. Back channels through neutral states sought to prevent escalation. Colombian intelligence intermediaries relayed discreet messages between both sides. The U.S. wanted its Marines out without public embarrassment. Caracas wanted assurance against an immediate retaliatory strike. Each side played a delicate game of face-saving chess. By the 6th night, the first secret communique arrived at the Venezuelan Defense Ministry, a coded acknowledgement that the U.S. fleet would maintain distance from territorial waters for operational reassessment. No apology, no admission. But it was enough. To the Venezuelan staffers gathered around the message, it felt like victory. Yet for Colonel Murillo, the victory was bittersweet. Standing on a coastal ridge near Puerto Cabello, he watched the faint silhouettes of distant ships vanish into the horizon. He understood the cost of what they had unleashed. The Catatumbo-X had bought Venezuela global attention, but also eternal scrutiny. Every move, every radar pulse would now be tracked, analyzed, anticipated. His creation had not ended American power, it had simply taught it a new fear. In the weeks that followed, U.S. intelligence agencies shifted doctrine. Pentagon research budgets redirected billions into counter-loitering AI drone intercept lasers and electronic camouflage. Defense analysts quietly labeled this episode the Catatumbo precedent. For the first time, asymmetric warfare had forced the world's most powerful navy to retreat without firing a shot. In Caracas, as the sun set over the Bolivarian skyline, The president addressed the nation once more, her voice carried across every screen, every street, every heart, still trembling from both pride and unease. We have shown that sovereignty is not measured by the size of our arsenal, but by the courage to defend it. The Catatumbo has spoken not in hatred, but in warning. Outside, the night echoed with distant chants and fireworks. Children pointed to the sky where drones once flew, now just stars over the Caribbean dark. Somewhere out there, deep beneath the sea's horizon, U.S. ships continued to drift silent, watchful, recalculating. The war had lasted only minutes, but its consequences would shape strategy for decades.